The city of Ouagadougou was still asleep when Moussa Diarra turned the key in the ignition. It was 5:03 a.m. The black armored vehicle hummed to life, and the presidential radio crackled softly with static. Today's schedule was light. President Ibrahim Traoré had only one morning engagement before returning to the palace for security briefings. Moussa knew the route. He always did. He had been the president's personal driver for 9 months, chosen for his silence, punctuality, and loyalty. But this morning, his hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel, because this morning, he was carrying more than the weight of the state. Underneath his seat was a modified ignition relay device, tucked in a secret compartment wired to the fuel line. With one press of a remote button, the engine could explode instantly, silently. Moussa hadn't built it, he hadn't even installed it, but he had let the men in last night. He had left the garage unlocked. He had looked away when they worked, because they had his family. 3 days earlier, while on a quick visit to the market, Moussa had been pulled into a van by masked men. Inside, a screen showed live footage of his wife and 2 daughters being held in a dark room. One of the men spoke calmly in French. "We know who you are. We know who you drive. If you want your family to walk out alive, you'll do one thing: press a button before 6 a.m. on Friday." He had tried to refuse. They showed him his daughter crying. He had tried to scream. They played a recording of his wife, begging him not to resist. So he said nothing. He simply nodded. Now it was Friday. Now it was 5:03 a.m. And the president would be walking out any moment. President Ibrahim Traoré exited the palace precisely on time, dressed in his signature military uniform, red beret sharp and steady. His posture, even in the calm of dawn, carried the weight of a nation at war with shadows. He opened the back door himself, nodding once to Moussa. "Good morning, brother." Moussa forced a smile. "Good morning, sir." As Traoré settled in, he said, "Skip the escort today. I want to ride quiet, just you and me." Moussa's heart dropped. "Sir?" Traoré glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "I have things on my mind. I need silence." Silence, Moussa nodded, and drove. They rolled through empty streets. The city hadn't yet come alive with its usual rhythms. For a moment, it felt like nothing could touch them. 2 men, 1 car, 1 country. But inside Moussa's jacket pocket, the remote sat like a stone. He could end it all. 1 press, 1 flash, 1 lie. 10 minutes into the drive, the president broke the silence. "You've been with me a long time, haven't you, Moussa?" "Yes, sir." "Do you believe in what we're doing?" Moussa hesitated. "Yes, sir, I do." Traoré nodded. "I ask because something feels heavy today, like the wind is hiding something." Moussa gripped the wheel tighter. "Sir, may I ask, do you believe people like me matter?" The president leaned forward slightly. "What do you mean?" "Drivers, workers, the ones behind the scenes." Traoré smiled faintly. "Let me tell you something. In my first week as president, I was almost killed by a man with a mop. Not a soldier, not a spy, a janitor. He had access, and someone thought that made him disposable. But he didn't do it. You know why?" "Why, sir?" "Because he had someone to live for." Moussa's throat tightened. "Do you have someone to live for, Moussa?" He couldn't answer, because he had everything to lose. They arrived at the Garden Memorial, outside the city. It was private land, no cameras, just flags, flowers, and a small stone bench. Moussa parked. The president opened the door, stepped out, and looked at the horizon. Moussa sat frozen, still gripping the wheel. Then Traoré turned back. "Come walk with me." "Sir?" "Leave the keys. Just walk." Moussa hesitated. The device was wired. The car was now empty. He had a window. If he walked away, if he pressed the remote now, no one would blame him. But then he saw the president's eyes. Calm, trusting, human, and he followed. They walked through the memorial quietly. Names of martyrs were etched into stone walls. Children who had died in rebel raids. Mothers who had shielded their sons. Soldiers lost on the border. Traoré stopped beside a plaque and rested his hand on it. "She was 12, he said, shot while delivering water to her father." Moussa said nothing. "I come here when I need to remember why we fight." Traoré continued. "Not for glory, not for politics, but because no child deserves to grow up in fear. He turned to Moussa. Tell me what they did to you. Moussa's breath stopped. What? Tell me what they did. The people who gave you that look in your eyes. Tears welled. I didn't want to. Moussa whispered. They took my family. They showed me videos. I thought if I pressed the button, at least my girls would live. Traoré stepped forward slowly. You didn't press it. No, but I let them in. I left the garage unlocked. I like the garage unlocked. Traoré placed a hand on his shoulder. They used you, but they didn't break you. Moussa collapsed to his knees. I'm sorry. The president knelt beside him. Don't be sorry. Be ready. Because if they got to you, they may be closer than we thought. He looked up at the hills, and we still have time to fight back. By the time President Ibrahim Traoré and Moussa Diarra returned from the memorial, the sun had risen above the horizon, casting long golden rays over the palace gates. Birds chirped as if nothing had happened, but Moussa's shirt clung to his back with sweat. The armored vehicle still sat quietly where they'd left it, unassuming, deadly. Captain Worry was waiting at the entrance, puzzled by the unannounced detour. He nodded at Moussa but spoke directly to the president. Sir, is everything all right? Traoré answered calmly. Everything that needs to be. He walked inside without another word. Moussa stayed behind. Captain Worry eyed him. You're late. Moussa didn't respond. He looked down at the ground, then back at the car. Sir, he finally said, I need you to check the vehicle. Worry raised an eyebrow. Why? There's something. I think someone's tampered with it. Worry's tone changed. What do you mean? Moussa didn't answer with words. Instead, he opened the door, reached under the seat, and pulled out the remote. He placed it gently into the captain's hand. Worry stared at it. His training kicked in instantly. He waved for 2 guards and instructed them to seal the vehicle and sweep the entire engine block. Then he turned back to Moussa. You need to tell me everything. Inside a private office, Captain Worry, Moussa, and President Traoré sat in a triangle of silence. Moussa had just finished telling them everything. The threats, the footage of his family, the instruction to press the button at a specific location and time. He expected to be arrested, tried, imprisoned, maybe worse. But the president leaned back in his chair and simply asked, Did you see any of their faces? Moussa shook his head. They wore masks, but one had a scar on his neck. Spoke French but with a Nigerian lilt. Worry scribbled notes. We've had chatter from that region lately. Sounds like a foreign back cell, probably not working alone. What about the video? Traoré asked. They streamed it to a screen. I don't know where they were holding my family. Traoré nodded. We'll find them. Moussa looked up, surprised. You believe me? I don't need to believe you, Traoré said. I can see it in your face. You didn't flinch when I knelt beside you. You cried, but not out of fear. You broke, but you didn't run. He stood. That's a man worth saving. While the Red Lions began tracking digital signatures and security feeds from the night before, Moussa was moved to a secure guest room under 24-hour watch. Not as a prisoner, but for his own safety. Traoré was sure of one thing. If they'd targeted the driver, they were inside the palace, or very close. The Red Lions cyber team scanned the vehicle's relay system. The explosives were real, professionally installed, clean wiring, no trace fingerprints. This wasn't done in a garage, the technician said. This was military-grade sabotage. Worry nodded. Then we're dealing with professionals, not rebels, not freelancers. He picked up the encrypted mobile left behind in the glove compartment. There was only one message on it. Confirm mission. If not by 0600, we proceed with Phase 2. Across the border, in a small compound near Niamey, the other half of the plan was already in motion. A man in a suit, bald with dark glasses, spoke into a secure phone. On the other end, a voice replied, then begin destabilization. Confirmed. The man hung up and walked into another room, where 2 other agents were sitting before laptops. Release the first video, he ordered. They clicked play. The screen showed a deep-fake video of President Traoré allegedly meeting with Russian mercenaries. It was fake, but looked real enough to convince the untrained eye. Within minutes, the video had been uploaded to multiple anonymous accounts, and was making its way through social media platforms, encrypted chat groups, and even community radio inboxes. By noon, protests had already begun forming in 2 districts. Back in Ouagadougou, the president was briefed. "They're trying to control the narrative before we expose them," said Aminata Keita, head of digital intelligence. Traoré watched the video. "It's a fake, but a good one. They'll use this to fracture us." UA asked. "Do we counter immediately?" Traoré shook his head. "No. We let it run. Let it breathe. Then we cut its throat with the truth." At 3 p.m., Traoré went live on national TV. Not in a suit, not at a podium. He sat at a simple desk with no script. He told the country everything: that someone had attempted to rig his vehicle to explode, that his own driver had been blackmailed, that the war was no longer just about borders, it was about hearts and minds. "They came to us in silence, hoping we would never see the enemy among us. But we have, and we are still here. Because Burkina Faso is not made of stone walls. It is made of people like Moussa Diarra, men who were broken, but chose not to break others." In living rooms and shops across the country, people stopped what they were doing. They listened. In some corners they cried. In the safe room, Moussa watched from a small monitor. He didn't cry, he didn't smile. He just whispered, "Thank you." And then he asked the guard one question: "Can I help now?" That evening, while the streets of Ouagadougou were beginning to calm, Moussa Diarra was led through a back hallway of the palace into a small room filled with unfamiliar faces. Men and women in plain clothes stood around a large map projected onto a digital table. Red and yellow dots glowed across it: surveillance points, suspected hideouts, and digital activity across the capital and border regions. Standing at the head of the table was Colonel Saidou, commander of Red Lion's intelligence. He turned as Moussa entered. "This is the driver?" he asked. President Ibrahim Traoré, seated near the far wall, replied calmly. "He's the reason I'm alive. Show him the board." Saidou didn't hesitate. He gestured at the map. "We're tracking 4 confirmed infiltration cells," he began. "One likely entered through Niamey, another through Ghana. 2 are already operating from inside the capital, posing as NGO workers and consultants." Moussa's eyes swept over the display. His mouth was dry. "And my family?" he asked. A woman standing near the wall stepped forward. Her name was Aminata Keita, cyber chief. "We've isolated a series of signals from the black market network that streamed the video to you. We believe your wife and daughters are being held inside a warehouse near the border with Togo. Our team is en route." Moussa's knees almost buckled. The president stood and walked to him. "We'll bring them back, but I need your help to finish this." Moussa nodded slowly. "What can I do?" That night, the team reviewed a plan involving Operation Mirrorwire, a sting designed to draw out the command node of the infiltration unit operating within the capital. "We're going to feed them false intel," Saidou explained. "A stage weakness in our east side perimeter. It will bait them into action. When they move, we move. But there was a problem. We need someone they already trust. Someone on the inside. Someone they think still works for them," said Aminata. Everyone looked at Moussa. He didn't hesitate. "I'll do it." Moussa was given a burner phone and specific instructions. He would send a message to the number from the glove compartment device saying delay due to internal complication, seeking alternate opportunity. It was risky. If they didn't believe him, they might kill his family immediately. But within minutes, a response came. "Proceed. New drop at 0300. Package inside. Execute at rally site." Saidou's eyes narrowed. "They're not done. They're accelerating." Moussa looked confused. "Oh, what package?" "Could be anything," Aminata muttered. "Sniper weapon, explosives, propaganda materials." President Traoré stepped forward. "We won't let you go alone." By 2 a.m., Moussa pulled into the East District's abandoned schoolyard, as instructed. Red Lions were already stationed along rooftops and alleyways, hidden in darkness, weapons ready. Inside the trunk of an old sedan, parked near the playground, was a duffel bag. Moussa opened it with shaking hands. Inside, a drone, fully assembled, battery live, small camera attached. In the side pocket, another remote. This one had only 2 buttons, Alpha and Omega. Moussa brought the bag back to his vehicle, where Colonel Saidu and Amanata joined him. "It's a reconnaissance drone," Amanata said. "Small payload possible. Could be a flash bomb or chemical dispersal." Moussa's voice shook. "They were going to use this in the rally tomorrow, weren't they?" "Not just the rally," Saidu said. "You were supposed to fly this while the president spoke." Moussa swallowed hard, and then press Omega. By 3:30 a.m., the drone had been disabled and replaced with a fake, wired with trackers, jammers, and one hidden camera. The goal was to follow whoever came to collect the feedback data from the drone after its flight. Moussa was now fully embedded in the plan. At 4 a.m., he made the drop and left. By 6 a.m., a man in a maintenance uniform picked up the duffel and walked calmly toward a nondescript SUV parked 2 blocks away. The Red Lions moved in. He was taken alive. Inside his pocket, a phone with direct messages to a foreign handler listed only as Patron 3. Back at the palace, Traoré met with Saidu and Amanata in his study. "He's not the top," Traoré said. "There's still someone above him, someone closer." Amanata nodded. "We've cracked part of the data stream from his phone. Most of it was routed through a masked IP in Accra. But the encryption type, it's embassy grade." "Which embassy?" "We're still narrowing it down, but we suspect either Senegal or Côte d'Ivoire." Traoré paced. "This isn't just espionage. This is a long game." Saidu asked, "Should we inform the public?" Traoré paused. "No, not yet. Let them think we're still guessing. We'll hit them harder when they feel safest." At 7:45 a.m., Moussa sat alone in the guest quarters. A Red Lion entered and said, "Sir, you have a visitor." Moussa stood, his heart racing. When the door opened, his wife walked in. Tears, silence, then trembling arms around each other. His daughters peeked out from behind her legs. Safe, alive. He dropped to his knees, sobbing. President Traoré stood in the doorway, watching quietly, then said, "They used your love as a weapon, but it became your shield instead." Later that day, Moussa addressed a small group of presidential staff, not as a hero, not as a victim, but as a man who broke the chain. He ended with one line, "I was forced into silence, but I chose to speak. That was the day I became free." The morning sun glinted off the dome of the presidential palace as President Ibrahim Traoré stood in his private war room, eyes locked on the satellite footage spread across 3 monitors. Though the air smelled of fresh coffee and jasmine from the garden outside, the tension in the room was suffocating. Across the table sat Colonel Saidu, arms folded, brows furrowed. Next to him, Amanata Keita scrolled through streams of intercepted communications. They had the drone, they had the courier, they had protected the rally, but the most critical piece of the puzzle, the architect, the one called Patron 3, was still at large. "Anything from the burner phone?" Traoré asked. Amanata shook her head. "The number has gone dark. No outbound signal since the last failed detonation command. It's likely been destroyed." "Then we need to make noise," the president said. He turned to Saidu. "Leak the arrest of the courier to foreign channels. Make it seem like he's talking. Let them panic. Let them move." Saidu nodded and stood. A wounded snake is easier to spot. That afternoon, as news of the failed assassination spread quietly among diplomatic circles, an encrypted message was sent from a device in the Senegalese embassy in Ouagadougou. "Asset compromised. Full exit protocol. Meet at Code Garden." The message was sent to an address linked to a cultural affairs advisor, an official who had visited the palace 5 times in the last month, often attending language exchange sessions with staff. His name Jean-Marc Agbo. But Jean-Marc wasn't just an advisor, hidden in plain sight. He was Patron 3, the final node in the chain, and he had one last plan. Elsewhere in the palace, Moussa Diarra sat beside his wife in the secure quarters. The girls were asleep on a small couch, one arm draped over the other. His wife gently squeezed his hand. "You didn't tell me," she whispered, "about the threats, about what they made you do." "I couldn't," Moussa said, voice hoarse. I thought I was saving you by staying silent." She leaned in, pressing her forehead to his. You did save us, but now you need to save yourself. At 4:13 p.m., the palace security detected a breach. An emergency gate had been opened from the inside by someone with high-level clearance. By 4:15, Aminata traced the movement of Jean-Marc Gbagbo's access badge through the northwest wing. His last known location, the Records Archive, a room that housed blueprints of the palace, the Red Lion's shift schedules, and security override codes. The room had been accessed using Gbagbo's fingerprint, but he never signed out. Worse, he had walked out wearing a Red Lion's uniform. He's gone camouflaged, Seydou growled. Get me visuals from all exit points. Traoré, already rising from his chair, said only one word: lockdown. The palace gates slammed shut, doors magnetically sealed. Guests were ushered to secure rooms. Outside, military checkpoints were activated across the capital. But it was Moussa, sitting quietly in the guest wing, who remembered something others missed. I've seen him, he told a nearby guard. The man in the glasses. He always parks in Bay 6. The information raced through to Aminata, who immediately pulled the logs. Bay 6. A silver SUV, license plate ending in 34Z, found. The vehicle had exited the palace compound just 3 minutes before the lockdown, slipping out moments before the override hit. Traoré clenched his jaw. Where did he go? Tracking now, Aminata said. 15 minutes later, the SUV was located at an old colonial train station, converted into an art gallery, a popular neutral space often used for diplomatic meetings. But today it was closed. President Traoré personally led a 6-man Red Lions team to the site, under the cover of dusk. Inside the gallery, Gbagbo Patron 3 stood alone beneath a skylight, sipping espresso beside a sculpture of a rising fist. He turned as the doors opened. So he said calmly, "You came yourself." Traoré didn't blink. "You've done enough damage, hiding behind fake embassies and cultural grants. It's time to speak like men." Gbagbo smiled faintly. "You're bold, Ibrahim, but naive. Do you really think arresting me will stop what's coming?" "I don't want to arrest you," Traoré replied. "I want you to understand what you've lost." Behind him, 2 Red Lions entered with a briefcase. They laid it on the floor and opened it. Inside were photos, the failed drone, the intercepted plans, the names of agents flipped, including the courier who had already confessed. Traoré stepped forward. "This is not your Africa to break." Gbagbo's hands tensed slightly. Then he chuckled. "You've won this battle, President, but Africa will eat its own again. It always does." Traoré looked him in the eye. "Not this time, not while we're awake." By 7 p.m., Patron 3 was in custody, unmasked, identified and processed. The palace lifted lockdown by nightfall. Inside his private office, Traoré finally sat down. Captain Worry entered with a fresh security report and a small package. "This arrived from the safe house where they kept Moussa's family," he said. The president opened it. Inside was a flash drive labeled in French, Contingency 12. He plugged it into a secure terminal. A single video played. It was a recorded message. Gbagbo's voice. "If you're watching this, I've been caught, but the plan doesn't die with me. Operation Echo begins in 3 days. Niger is next." Traoré called Seydou and Aminata. "Get me a direct line to Niamey, and alert Mali. We're not just fighting for Burkina Faso anymore." He stood. "Tell them we're coming." The next dawn was not quiet. In a heavily fortified room below the presidential palace, President Ibrahim Traoré met with high-ranking envoys from Niger and Mali, his voice calm but urgent. Satellite images covered the table, convoys at borders chatter on encrypted networks, new waves of mercenary movement. "Operation Echo," he said, tapping the words printed in red. "It was supposed to start with me, but now that I'm still alive, they're moving to destabilize Niger." A general from Niamey leaned forward. "We've already spotted armed groups near the border, unmarked uniforms, sniper teams," a Malian intelligence officer added. "And in Bamako there are rumors of military advisors from Europe offering aid, but only to those who oppose you. Traoré nodded. They're not using armies. They're using fear, lies, money. He looked each man in the eye. So we give them something they never expect. What's that? One asked. Unity. By nightfall, a joint military alliance had been drafted. Operation Sovereign Pact. 3 nations, 1 cause. Defend the sovereignty of West Africa without foreign influence, and dismantle the covert network operating behind the scenes. At the heart of the coordination center was a familiar face. Moussa Diarra, now wearing a clean navy blue uniform with a red lion's badge stitched to the sleeve, not ceremonial, earned. He moved through the halls with quiet precision, helping coordinate logistics, reviewing intercepted messages, tracking communications between suspicious NGOs. What he lacked in formal military training, he made up for in memory and instinct. He remembered faces, patterns, voices. He remembered the man who first threatened him, the way his French dipped into a northern accent, the scar near his thumb. When the Red Lions captured a new courier near the Niger border, Moussa identified him within seconds. That's him, he said, the one who showed me the video of my family. Traoré stood beside him. Are you ready to face him? Moussa nodded. In the interrogation chamber, the man, shackled but defiant, grinned when he saw Moussa. So, he said, in broken French, you survived. I did more than survive, Moussa replied. I helped stop you. The man scoffed. You think this ends with me? No, Moussa said. I think this ends with all of you. He turned to leave, but paused. My daughters sleep safely now. Can you say the same about your cause? Meanwhile, Aminata Keita cracked into a hidden archive, found on a laptop seized during the arrest. The files were disguised as agriculture data, but embedded within were names, hundreds of them, advisors, bankers, agents, some inside West Africa, some outside. One of the names stood out, a senior aide in an allied African government, long considered neutral. He was working both sides. Aminata said. Traoré took a long breath. Then we expose him. In a televised address the next day, President Ibrahim Traoré stood before a neutral gray backdrop. No flags, no podium, just a face, a voice, and the truth. He revealed the names behind Operation Echo. He named countries, yes, but more importantly, he named individuals. Corrupt officials, covert actors, complicit financiers. He didn't accuse entire nations. He called out the architecture of betrayal. We are not at war with the world, he said. We are at war with those who believe Africa will never awaken. Those who hide behind diplomacy while sowing destruction. To them we say, we are awake now. We are united. The broadcast aired across Africa. Some stations tried to cut it. Millions re-uploaded it. The people, long silenced by fear or disillusionment, began to speak, and then to march. In Lomé, where Moussa's journey had begun, protesters gathered outside the foreign consulate that once housed the man who threatened his family. Signs read, Africa is not for sale, no more puppets. Traoré showed us the way. Back in Ouagadougou, Moussa stood quietly near the garden, where he once nearly pressed a button that would have killed his president. Now he watched as Traoré kneeled to pray, the same way he had that morning weeks ago. Except this time, Moussa stood behind him, not with a remote in his hand, but with a protective stance and a red lion's pistol holstered at his hip. Another aide approached. The region is stable for now. Agbo Patron 3 has been transferred to The Hague. The Joint Security Pact holds. Even the African Union is taking notice. Moussa said nothing. The aide left, and Traoré, finishing his prayer, looked back at his driver-turned-defender. Funny, he said, how it all started here. Moussa smiled faintly. I almost took your life, and now you protect it. They shared a quiet nod. No need for medals, only understanding. That night, a final message arrived at the palace. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a plan. It was a handwritten letter. No name, no return address. Only 5 words scrawled in shaky script. You broke the chain, finally.